Okay, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending whenever you're watching this. My name's Andrew Richardson. I'm a PhD student in School of Social Sciences, Humanities and Law. Will Short has kindly asked me to cover this lecture all about periodization. So we're going to be talking about the literature, the methodology, what coaches, practitioners, trainers would be using for their clients, different populations and or sports. And we're going to look at some of the different periodization models out there. So without further ado, let's crack on. So some of the learning outcomes, we're going to be building upon your exercise selection lecture seminar you would have had, obviously depending on COVID-19 guidelines, and obviously if this was done face-to-face or online, but I'm sure Will can sort you out there. We're going to go into what all goes into a training program. Going to be looking at how to accessorize your accessories. So that's like your supplementary exercises around your main training program or event, how to get the most out of them. As I said earlier, going into the literature surrounding the different periodization models, looking at alternative ways to change the variables for your programs or your programming. So that's like the fit and smart principles, go a little bit more in depth into them. Looking at how different sports and the different planning needs, tapering the peak for competitions and events, or when you're going to be testing the client, testing your athletes, and then some client athlete differences and psychology of programming factors. So we do have a lot to get through here. So again, a few early points to address. The only bad program is one that does not change. The success of the program depends on constant change, that be over a daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly progression. Because you want to have a program that has some form of change, that be, you do more sets, do more reps, you increase the load, you spend more time under tension, you do more sessions over the week, increase the amount of time you spend training as well. Perhaps increase the incline, the decline, the speed, the velocity, the different types of training. As long as there's change in it, you're going to see some sort of adaptation and gains. And this new stimuli must be given to the athlete at various times throughout the year. And this is not to be mistaken for simply returning to the previous stimuli. So what that simply means is just don't do the same program twice in a row. Yes, you may still get benefits out of it, that being from a technical point of view, but it's always good to add variance to a training program, so it not only prevents boredom, but you're going to see a greater yield in your training results. And that's why you must come up with new ways of stimulating and stressing your athletes or clients in order to spur change for the better. So some terminology to go over. A training session and days. So a single workout is a practice or session. So for example, mine be a single session for me could be on the bike or the rowing machine or going to the gym to do weights. For most, it's the same as a training day. For advanced athletes, several sessions may comprise a day. So they may do a couple of sessions, maybe a mobility workout, yoga, Pilates sort of thing, as part of their recovery. Then they can maybe do a technical session in the morning, like run through drill skills, or another day it could be very much where they do a very hard training session in the gym, then followed by some form of active recovery in the evening. So a training week is a series of several training days. Together, this would be 5 to 6 days of training, really. And then this could be put into context with the terminology of a micro cycle. And a microcycle is typically a week because of the difficulty in developing a training plan. That it should align with the calendar year, because if you don't do that, it makes it quite hard to follow. Hence why a microcycle is always a week and it follows the weeks within a calendar year. And each microcycle is planned based on where it is an overall macro cycle, which we'll come on to next. But before that, we have to understand what a training month is, which is a series of organized training weeks. And again, these are sectioned out into blocks of training, so you could be working on your work capacity, your speed, your strength, muscle, hypertrophy, muscular endurance, whatnot, could be anything. And obviously a mesocycle represents this phase of training with a duration of generally between 2 to 6 weeks of training. However, this can depend on the sport and the client's needs, obviously. Then a training year is a collection of training months with different or similar goals that work towards the overall performance goal for the year. And this is your macro cycle. And the macro cycle refers to an annual plan or yearly plan that works towards peaking for the goal competition of the year. And there are 3 phases in the macro cycle: the prep phase, the competition phase, and the transition phase. A couple other terminologies to go over, a couple other terms to go over, I should say. Intensity. So in the strength world, this is like the weight on the barbell or percentage of an individual 1 RM or 1 rep max. And it can be presented in absolute terms in terms of the weight, the kilograms, or in relative percentage of 1 rep max or in repetition maximum values. So RM means how many reps I can do before failing and before I can't do any more. So that instead of 1 RM, it could be 3 RM, 5 RM, 6 RM, 10 RM. You know, it could be anything. You could put like a repetition maximum value to any weight. In other parts, intensity usually represents the quality of work done, like velocity, height, pace, power, whatnot. Volume, this represents the amount of quantity of the work or the load done. Again, within strength and conditioning on the strength world, volume is measured with the number of sets, number of lifts, the total tonnage. And volume can be represented in absolute terms, tonnage, so the total kilograms you lift per exercise, per training session, per week, per month, per year as such. And it can be relative or the normalized volume. It can also be represented per intensity brackets, like volume in the 80 to 90% zone of your 1 rep max. So the 10 programming commandments. So these are sort of 10 key points you should bear in mind when working with clients or special population groups or athletes, teams, whatnot. And these are apply to them all in terms of like being adherent to a program, or again the most out of a program is the best way of describing that. So the first one is being consistent in your training and don't miss training sessions. Very self-explanatory, but if clients and athletes are missing training sessions, they're not going to get the most out of it and never going to be as the best as they can be. Number 2, not missing lifts or exercises regularly in your training. Again, it's okay for a client and athlete to miss lift, particularly if it's like they're maxing out or testing. But if someone can't do the program that's prescribed to them, like they're missing sets, then you know something has to be changed, and you have to reflect on this and make the necessary changes so your client can keep going forward. Number 3, find out what works for you through trial and error. If an exercise works in the program, the client gets a lot out of it and they do it well, safely, and they enjoy it, keep it in. There's no point doing stuff that's complex. You know, why would you do a clean and press where it's too complicated technically for a client, where you can just do a dumbbell clean and press? Or you could just do an upright row, then a separate exercise of shoulder press after. Again, just keep it simple for the client. Straining with a heavy lift. So learn to teach your clients and athletes that heavy load isn't a bad thing, that they can do it. It's about teaching them first to have good form, learn how to brace, engage their body in the right planes of motion, and ensuring that they can strain and grind with a heavy lift. Avoid program hopping. Again, this is quite common in people who are new to the gym or inexperienced athletes, where they would jump from one program to the next they've seen online or whatnot, or they've seen a friend use it. Again, with clients, and even if yourself you're training, give yourself enough time to figure out whether a program is working for you, because it may take you 4 to 6 weeks to learn to do the program correctly, getting good habits, and then you really start loading up the weight, the intensity, the actual time, and the volume in it before you see progress in your fitness. So again, take time, don't just jump from program to program. 7, again, build your program around planned deloads. So this should be when your training cycle is based off these deload weeks after a competition or a testing session, where it allows you to back off and recover properly. Again, it just allows maximum recovery so you can keep progressing. Think this is like a step. So you're going up, then back down, deload, then you can go back up again, back down, then back up again. So that way it's a wave and such, so you're progressing in the long term whilst allowing your body to recover, which we'll talk more about later on in this lecture. Again, form and technique are more important than programming itself. If your form and technique are good, you're going to see results. If your form and technique are bad, you're more likely to get injured and you're not going to get out the most out of your program and training. Again, find a good coach and a good crew, team, or group of friends to teach you and provide honest critique. Again, don't train with people who are gonna blow smoke up to you and like sort of tell you you're working hard when you're not really. You're not getting the full range of motion. You know, you're sort of adding weights on, but you're not actually getting the full range from training. You're not keeping adhering to your rest times and whatnot. Again, get a coach or a group of friends. You're going to keep you honest and going to keep working you hard, because that's the only way you're going to improve. There's no point like pretending you aren't. Again, 10, learn to regulate your volume and assess how much max training or maxing out to actually include. Again, this is quite aimed at drug-free lifters or athletes who are tested, because they simply couldn't handle the volume of an athlete or client who's on performance-enhancing drugs. So you need to obviously listen to your body and watch the volume you lift and train, as too much can lead to fatigue and or injury. And obviously make sure you plan everything around to test, so don't be frequently lifting heavy all the time, because you will get injured. And obviously, last one, give it everything you've got, work 110% and more. And if your goals don't excite you in the training program, you know, maybe you need to change your actual goals and set some realistic goals, but do set some big ones too, that's going to actually want you to keep on training. Okay. Again, got a video here. It's embedded in the lecture, which we'll share out with the video of this too. And again, there's a very good video. There's a group of like strength coaches and athletes discovering how all their 10, 20, 30 years of training experience has changed from different programs, and how they've learned and evolved. And from a program perspective, it's quite interesting just to hear what they're saying. And again, the group on the screen here, most of their sports are going to be powerlifting, weightlifting, strongman, throwing events, and athletics like shot put hammer, and some of them are competitive bodybuilders as well. So again, it's quite interesting to sort of see what their different types of training styles are and how it's evolved over time. Okay, this is where we can start to go into some of the actual theory. So be specific when training your athletes and clients, but not too much. So what I mean by this, it is obvious to make a statement such as this, but many coaches do fail to address this simple task. So a coach should train the athlete's skill technique first, energy systems for the sport or the client to help improve their general health and well-being, the required components of fitness or what this related to their sport goal, and they both should relate to the movements or day-to-day tasks they may be doing. So there's a bad example of being too specific when training clients. So from the book Explosive Weightlifting for Sports by Newton and Kramer, they had the USA men's cycling team, the track cyclists, do squats the same stance they cycle in. So they were squatting very narrowly. And as a result, most got injured, and those that didn't get hurt regressed their performance or stay the same. So there wasn't any net benefit out of it. So they thought if we squat in the same stance we cycle, we'll see benefit. When in fact that didn't actually work. You should squat, shoulder width apart relative to your own height. Again, in a practical session further down the line, we're going to be going over all the form coaching technical aspects of building the squat, bench, deadlift, and other sort of compound lifts around for yourself, and how you can coach it to your clients, and working with different clients at different sizes and shapes. So that'll be later on in the semester 2. Hopefully we can go back to face-to-face teaching, because that'll make it so much easier. If not, we'll be doing videos such as this, which will provide videos on each different type of lift. So in essence, the basics do work. Don't do the advanced stuff poorly. Top level athletes always do the basics as they work. So how does an athlete client needs incorporate into a training plan? Well, as I alluded to earlier, you need to do the needs analysis of the sport or the athlete. So the positions, the time, energy systems used, components of fitness, their injuries, training history, whatnot. Needs analysis of the athlete, their current bests, their current injuries, their weaknesses, their goals, what position they play in, whatnot. What's the aim of the plan? Are we trying to make them faster, stronger, bigger, trying to lose weight, trying to improve the resting heart rate? What are we trying to achieve? Designing the plan, again, using up-to-date research, evidence-based practice out there to help build this. Use the athlete's profile and goals to direct the plan, create your own, add your own perspective to it. If I know an athlete has terrible posterior strength, so anything on the back, from like the back of the neck all the way down to their calves, I can do more stuff on this, such as trap bar deadlifts, squats, rows, some core work to actually help really strengthen them up. Monitor and test the athlete and client is just ensure that, one, you're not overtraining or detraining the client, that when you're testing, it's the right time to actually test, that they're going to see improvements. It's like a cumulative progression over time. You're not looking for massive jumps in progression within 4 to 6 weeks. You want to see consistent and retained gains. You don't want to see a gain and then a loss. Again, you do see that sort of behavior in crash course dieting or these fad diets on Instagram, the internet, and whatnot. And then the last one, obviously, adapt the plan once targets have been met. So once a competition is finished or the training program's done, again, reflect, review, analyze, see what went well, what didn't, and then what the next goals are going to be. So again, the way we're going to do these questions with these online lectures, the best way to be is you pause the screen now, and then spend 5 minutes or a couple minutes writing down your answer, then unpause it, and then we'll then continue on. So the first question is, what sort of client may not need a detailed spreadsheet periodized plan when starting out? So pause, and then I will see you back. Okay, so you're back. Let's see what the answer is. So for me, this would be a complete gym novice who's trying to lose weight. So again, allow me to explain. So these are the clients I've had in the past here. Again, severely overweight, probably a borderline obese or in that obese category, low level fitness, understand the gym, never really been in a gym before, very poor diet and sleep pattern, but they want to lose weight. So here's what I did. So I got them just to move and have fun when training around their lifestyle. So reduce their takeaways from 6 times a week to 5 for the first 3 weeks, then add 2 to 3 20-minute walks a day. Reduce takeaways from 5 to 4 times a week for the next 3 weeks, add in 2 gym cardio sessions a week to replace the walking they're like doing. But I still encourage them to still walk if they want to go out for a walk. That's fine, which this client did. Reduce the takeaways from 4 times a week to 3 for the next 3 weeks, and add in 2 more gym cardio sessions. So in essence, by this stage, you're looking at by 9 weeks, he was doing two cardio, 2 weights, and a couple of walks a week as well. So nearly every day he was moving. So one of these clients now has lost 20 kilos, so it's 102 kilograms, 82 kilos, over 3 stone. So that was just over 94 days of training over 4 months, with December included. And now we're looking at a detailed periodized plan of focusing on phases for mobility, cardiovascular endurance, muscle hypertrophy. But what we worked on was lifestyle habits, routine change, movement awareness, technique, and building a starting point to work from. And the key, like, a program doesn't need to be all flashy advanced movements, you know, complicated high levels of periodization models if the client isn't an athlete. And even then, you may need it, you may not, which we'll be going on to. The basics work, and if you follow the progressive overload and fit principles, you will achieve great results with all your clients. So the three types of athlete and client you will meet. So again, the novice, as I was saying, a novice has progressed from training session to training session, very much a linear progression in weight. Novices need a small number of lifts or exercises to achieve their progression. They don't need a lot. Novices will not only develop overtraining. Sorry, novices will not develop overtraining that easily because they're so new to it that, like, you know, the training is going to be a positive effect for them. And if a novice starts to get stuck or not progressing, simply have an off, or if it's just an off day with them, just get them to reduce the weight, focus on the technique and the form more, and that is enough for them to recover and get back on track with it. And again, for a novice here in this diagram, anything they do is going to improve really all the aspects of their physical health and fitness. So then we got the intermediate. So this is like kind of like your amateur level athlete, so county to national level competitor, perhaps in schools, or someone who he's trying to progress from amateur status to like to pro. And again, intermediates cannot put an equal emphasis on all exercise in terms of volume, intensity, and effort during a single training session, and or all during training sessions within the microcycle. So they need training variety, and that's why, you know, they need to be specific and create a detailed plan. And the variety lies in the way basic exercises are applied and not in a bunch of new exercises. This is from Practical Programming, page 177. Intermediates need greater stress, like to be the load, more sets and volume and greater intensity to cause improvements, but they need more rest, thus the need for weak variety, and improvements are slower and to come and smaller in time. Intermediates can hit PBs from week to week in general. However, intermediates do need regular, more longer unload periods compared to novices. So intermediates can still make good improvements, but the emphasis here, they need to recover more so they can keep improving as well due to the added stress they're placing on their bodies. So the elite level athlete, so these clients cannot develop everything at once. They need to prioritize their training goals, or they will suffer from overtraining and limited progress. The cumulative delayed training effects of series of workouts becomes more and more important. Personal bests are achieved every couple of weeks or months for these athletes. Training must be organized into longer periods of time, and those periods progress from higher volume and lower intensity toward lower volume and higher intensity. Sometimes the characteristic number 3 doesn't always apply, especially if the aim of training block is to produce acute overreaching later usage of delayed training effects. So what I find is, like with the elite athlete, they'll very much, you know, focus on an aspect. So here we've got strength, but then they'll do a little bit around everything else just to maintain it so nothing gets detrained. And they'll very much, you know, rotate these things between the two here. So using the graph or the image, they'll rotate strength with muscle mass with technique, and up and down. So you're constantly retained to see that. And obviously, as each improvement adds up in each of these individual ones, then eventually a personal best will then be achieved. Hence why it's every few weeks or months they'll achieve a personal best. According to Mark Ripto, the author of Practical Programming book, the lifters athletes can be generally classified to 4 groups: novice, intermediate, advanced, and elite. When planning strength training, one should take into account the level of the lifter because there are distinct characteristics within each group. So looking at the rate of adaptation, that's in terms of like your progression, and obviously you need for training complexity, how you need to make training more complicated. No, I wouldn't say complicated. You need to create more training variety and change, so you can keep adapting. So beginner, you know, it's very much they can do anything and they will quickly progress. You don't need to make it very complex. Intermediate, you can sort of see as time goes on, you do need to add in more variables to elicit change to allow the rate of adaptation to increase. Again, the more advanced athlete, again, regularly competing in competitions all year round, this is where you start to see more sort of training variants, so different styles of training programs. Maybe they've seen different coaches now at this stage, but as you can sort of see, the rate of adaptation starts to level off because it's getting harder to get these new personal bests. And then the elite level athlete, the top of the game, going for world championships, Olympic events, they need to really sort of change their training drastically from whenever they first started to what they're at now, so they can still keep making progressions, and their progressions are quite small once they reach that stage. So accessorize your accessories, so maximize the return of exercise selection. So I'll use me as an example for this one, as I know my numbers from exercises and training pre-COVID, and whenever I was training regularly inside a gym. So a current competition squat of a low bar squat was 260 kilos. I've done 261 kilograms with a high bar in December 2019. Again, could have done it for 2 to 4 reps, probably 3 reps. However, I would rarely train my competition squat low bar, as I have 3 to 5 accessories that will make that competition squat go up, and by up I mean increase that total lift. So that'll be front squat, high bar squat, safety bar squat, box banded squat, and good mornings. But then I've got different variations within them, which would then, if I see improvements in all of these, then my competition squat will go up anyway. So that's what I mean by accessorizing your accessories. So if we go on to the next one, again, excuse the pun, but variety is the spice of life. So I'm sort of looking at is try and think, okay, you know, if my client wants to lose weight or gain muscle mass size, you know, what exercises are going to yield the best benefit and what exercise will work best with my client. That's what you're really trying to ask here, and it's about trying to work out. So again, this is one of those graphs created by Jay Farrant from Abs Training Systems down in Dublin. And again, he's used all these different codes. Again, you can do this in a spreadsheet or just by hand, totally up to you. But this is how he would sort of plan out his training for his sort of athletes and clients, depending on their goals or whatever it is. And again, there's a really good lecture on this, accessorizing your accessories, by Dave Tate, and it goes into a number of different sports, particularly goes into NFL, goes into sprinting, but again, mainly around strongman, powerlifting, weightlifting, and bodybuilding. Okay, so some of the program factors. Again, you will come across this in your previous lecture or some of the other previous courses, modules, whatnot. So practical considerations for any training program is going to be intensity and load, volume, sets, reps times weight, makes your total tonnage, the frequency of training, how often you train, the rest periods between sets, exercise selection, what you start with, what would you end with, and the order of them, and the speed of the movement, the muscle action. Is it tempo training? Is it eccentric training? Or is it speed? So there's loads of factors that can go into actual training. Again, a lot of the training programs are based off Priplin's chart. So the idea of Priplin's chart is to act as a guide for your sets and reps and your rep scheme for a desired training effect. Think of it as a map giving you directions on what you should be doing to get you to your desired training goal. So e.g., a sprinter would do 8 to 10 sets of 1 to 3 reps at 30 to 50% of their one arm speed for strength power. A bodybuilder would do 3 to 6 sets of 12 reps at 40 to 60% of their 1RM for hypertrophy. A rugby player would do 48 sets of 6 to 8 reps, 50 to 70% for strength speed. And a powerlifter would do 6 to 10 sets of 2 to 4 reps at 75 to 90% of their 1RM for absolute strength. However, all these athletes here may rotate their programs throughout the year to work on hypertrophy, strength, speed, power, and absolute strength as well. So they may just rotate it in. It's just some of them may do this more often than not to elicit their desired training goal, or elicit a training adaptation to achieve a goal within their own sporting environment. And again, I've added a little link here as well so you can read a little bit more on Priplin's chart. Okay, so we're going on to our periodization models, looking at theories, concepts, and examples. So there's references put throughout this and at the end. So what is periodization? So first off, this is the English spelling, and this is the American spelling of it. So again, it's just so if you ever come across it in books or whatnot, they both mean the exact same thing. It's just one's got an S and one's got a Z. So periodization is the systematic plan of athletic or physical training, and the aim is to reach the best possible performance in the most important competition of the year or event or time, depending on client, sport, whatnot, and involves progressive cycling of various aspects of a training program during a specific period. Another definition of it is programmed variation in the training stimuli with the use of planned rest periods to augment recovery and restoration of an athlete's potential. That sounds really, really cool. That's my favorite definition of them all. Periodization is the long-term sequence of training which allows for three distinct benefits to individuals, clients, or athletes. Enhanced rate of progress, aka increased progression, gains, improvements, personal bests, always good. Reduced injury rates, because obviously no one wants to be injured. No one wants to do a program that's going to make you injured because it's pointless. And the ability to peak at the right time for a competition or meet, not 1 week before or 2 weeks after. So what does periodization achieve? So it manages the training stressors to reduce overtraining potentially. And fatigue can come from a number of stressors, some unrelated training, could be work, home, family, whatnot. These stressors can accumulate and wreak havoc on athletic performance, and stress and fatigue must be periodically alleviated. So Dr. Israel's article here explains a bit more about that. Promote long-term athlete development, or the LTAD model. Again, fire LTAD into your search engine. You'll get some really nice figures and explanations in it, or better yet, fire LTAD model into Google Scholar, and again, so you'll get some really good papers on that. This is about structuring precise training in interventions to target specific physiological and performance outcomes. And we want to train the fitness characteristics critical for success in the sport. Although many sports overlap quite a bit, training to be a good marathon runner probably is going to help you break any snatch records. So that's like throwing the bar over your head. So again, it's about doing the right training. And again, apologies for the pixelized image, but it's like one of the better ones I got. So you got fatigue in red, fitness in green, and preparedness in purple. Then you got obviously volume in blue, intensity in red as the bar charts. Then you got week 3, week 2, and final week. So the weeks are going down. So as the time goes on, you want your fatigue levels to drop so you can peak in the final week before you compete at your event. You want your fitness level will take a slight hit, but you still be very physically fit for your event. Because obviously earlier in the year you're building up your fitness so you can maintain it throughout, so it's a higher level throughout the actual year. But as the weeks go down to your actual competition week, your preparedness goes up, so your ability to compete better increases. So fatigue goes down, preparedness goes up, fitness is maintained, your slightly drops off, and that's kind of your ideal scenario to be in when competing. However, I would argue you should always try and have your fitness way higher than what your sporting demand actually needs. So that does mean if it does take a hit, it's not going to be a detrimental effect for your performance, and you should always be making your training harder than your actual sporting demands or the sport it actually needs, because it'll make your sport easier and it'll make it far more fun, because likelihood is you'll probably win more as well. So periodization is comprised of a number of additional training principles beyond that, which will be addressed here. But for now, let's take a look at a few basic concepts. So specificity, as a lot of people have difficulty saying that. The degree of association between the training and performance variables. It's important to be specific, but not too specific where you're taking away the actual movement to gain progress. Think back to the example early on where the USA men's cycling team tried to perform squats in the same stance they cycled in, or pedaled, one way of putting it. Variation, again, altering training variables in order to stimulate specific adaptations and reduce overtraining potential. Directed adaptation, the progress by which your body makes adaptations specific to the training stimuli over time. Although variation is good, too much variation can be detrimental, thus minimal time thresholds are necessary to drive adaptation. Phase potentiation, the process of structuring the training plan into smaller phases that target specific fitness characteristics which build upon each other over time. Again, these are sort of the three main elements within the program. Again, this is getting really technical now. So you got your undulation model, which is obviously changing the training volume or intensity to expose the body to different stressors. A good example of undulating periodization is Smolov Junior program, mainly for squats and bench pressing. And again, I wrote an article about that here. Linearity, this is progressing a training stress or fitness characteristic in linear fashion. It is roughly equivalent to progressive overload for a single and multiple factors or exercises. An example of this linear progression is the training program 531 by Jim Wendler. And the last one is conjugation, which is regularly changing training stressors with the purpose of different training physical characteristics like maximal strength and explosiveness simultaneously. An example of conjugate periodization is the Westside method. Then, so you got three phases of any program for long-term success. You got hypertrophy phase, strength and power, peaking, and taper phase. So hypertrophy, again, is to add muscle mass and size. Bigger muscle is a stronger muscle. Again, you could joke who doesn't want to have huge arms and guns, whatnot. Again, but when you increase the surface area and actual size of a muscle, it will be stronger and generally fitter, and it can do more. So that's obviously, think of also hypertrophy as your base building for other sports in terms of building your CV base, getting your miles in like the off season and towards the pre-season. So after hypertrophy phase, you come the strength and power phase. This is building upon the large volume done in phase one, and this training will focus on developing maximal strength and or increasing the rate of force production, so increasing the speed and strength here. Then finally is the peaking and tapering phase. This is where you reduce the volume and the load and also increase the intensity so the athlete is competition ready, and they're just practicing the competition skills more and more here, and all is geared towards getting a new competition best, as shown from the diagram here. So training intensity will increase, getting ready for the competition is where you're going to compete. As you get near, the training volume will decrease, allow you to fully recover. This allows the intensity to go up as well, so you can obviously mimic competition scenarios in games, like training a bit harder. But as you're just getting near it, you'll then deload. Your intensity will drop off, which means it allows you to recover, which obviously allows your performance to go up, which means at the right time, you will then peak and then achieve a personal best and do better in competition. Appears just to be a white screen. Apologies in that there. Then we got our sequential method of periodization. The sequential method uses specific time intervals to develop only one training goal at a time, hence in sequence, one goal at a time. And again, these are sort of comprised of long linear and short linear methods. So long linear generally is a method that uses longer time intervals of 3 to 4 weeks to develop one training goal, and the short linear uses 1 to 2 weeks. And again, note that they are the same sequence as note they are similar in sequence, and they may do the same exercise and movements, but you may not achieve as much adaptation due to the lack of time, i.e. one being shorter than the other. However, one could put more higher intensity in the shorter one if we're looking to try and push on more progression in it. But then that comes down to the athlete if they're able to recover or not during it. Then we got our concurrent method, which also looks at developing all abilities in a given time period, mostly one microcycle a week. The concurrent methods of periodization can be further classified according to the emphasis on a particular ability. All abilities have the same emphasis, volume, training, and time. And again, the ordinary concurrent method of periodization uses the same emphasis to develop all target motor abilities in given one time. The problem is that some abilities need to develop more than others, i.e., this could be, do I need to spend more time in technical work or more in hypertrophy work? And it could be defined as the time spent on developing a particular ability in one microcycle rather than volume. And the volume of hypertrophy and structural work will always be bigger than power and max strength work. But when expressed as time, they'll be similar. So in plain English, what that is, you may spend the same amount of time on each different variable and aspect of your training. However, some of those aspects need to be spent. You spend more time on, or prioritize what you need to spend time on first. I.e., you need to learn to walk before you can run first. So you need to learn how to do your movement first before you start lifting heavy in it. Then you got conjugate. So the conjugate method is a multifaceted method of routine and linking special exercises that are close in nature to one another. And again, the most common template for this method revolves around three methods of weight training used in conjunction with one another. And these are overcoming maximal resistance that causes maximal near maximal muscle tension, or the max effort method. Use considerably less than maximal resistance until fatigue causes one to fail. Repeated effort method, using submaximal weight accompanied by maximal speed. Dynamic method. And again, Louis Simmons of Westside Barbell would say the purpose of the conjugate method is to handle max lifts while allowing the muscle to have ample recovery, in turn avoiding overtraining the central nervous system or the CNS. The conjugate method does this by using a complex method of routine special exercises that are close in nature to the power lifts. And the article below explains the conjugate layout with training examples and videos. Yeah, so in terms of the actual link, it talks a little bit about it in here, but I would recommend just searching Westside Barbell and or Louis Simmons into YouTube, and you'll get plenty of information out of that. So the technical definition of blocked periodization would be the general approach to the competition of block periodized training assumes a sequence of three different type mesocycle blocks that form a single training stage ending in some competition. In practical terms, it's a system of focusing on general abilities further out from the competition and becoming more directed as the competition draws near, i.e., pre-season, off-season, you're going to do stuff away from your main sport to increase variety, have a bit more fun, but still keep some level of fitness. So it's not uncommon for a rower to do cycling and running and or swimming in the off-season just for a bit of general CV training. But as they get back into rowing, all time will be spent on the erg and or on the water itself in their boats. So again, it's just so, and obviously that'll go through the whole training block. So within block periodization, you've got a couple of different terminologies that separates out their own blocks. You've got accumulation, which would be like building a foundation for the house. The intensity is reduced, but there's a higher volumes of work. And the work in this block will also have a great amount of general work and have very less specific movements or not related to your actual sport. So in the sport of powerlifting, as an example, this purpose of block would be to improve hypertrophy, increase work capacity, i.e. just get fitter. And the next stage would be transmutation. During this phase, the intensity increases and the volume is reduced. The movement in this block starts to include specific competition style lifts, so your squats, your bench, and your deadlift. And the goal of this block is to develop the abilities that are specific for the competition lifts. And obviously, just generally, you'll start to increase the percentage to higher levels, so you actually start training more for your sport. And the realization is the final stage of training before a competition or meet. And the volume is low, the intensity is high, often referred to as the taper. And during this block, the training is directed to the competition lifts. And the percentages are usually 90% or higher, so it's mimicking the competition sport. Okay, so now we're going to supercompensation and their models. So what this is referring to is you need to do enough training which causes a stimulus enough for an adaptation to take place. Supercompensation models, general adaptation syndrome, gas and stimulus recovery and adaptation (SRA) model. So this is referring to once the human body recovers from training, the stress, it expects a similar level of stress in future training sessions, during which muscles become more efficient at handling heavier and larger resistance. This is known as the supercompensation model by Koshlenny, if I pronounce that correctly, where an athlete trains, there's a training stimulus that has an effect on the athlete's baseline level. As soon as recovery is implemented, the levels of fatigue will reduce, and that baseline level has then gone up. Whatever demands are placed upon the body, it will react accordingly as said demands increase. This is known as the GAS model or general adaptation syndrome. So the GasMolar presents a case that whatever stress the body will face, it will recover from. It will recover from it and adapt to be better able to handle the stressor. The body will go through a fatigue and recovery phase, similar to the supercompensation model, with fatigue being the stress in this case. Once the fatigue has been reduced, the level of adaptation increases. However, this reaches a point where the athlete will burn out as they cannot get any better and they will overtrain into the exhaustion phase. This can happen if the overreaching phase of a program is too long, i.e. you're essentially burning the athlete out and they can't recover quickly enough to meet the demands placed on them. So the gas and supercompensation models feed into the use of periodization as the shock of a new stimuli combined with an increase in fatigue from the training load elicits a bigger response to adapt. This can be auto-regulated or person-to-person study, meaning this can be different or changed or handled by the person in different ways, which we can go on to. And also the gas models by Sale 1946. As you've been seeing, there's quite similar images coming up. So again, SRA, you get better by training, but the gains are made when you rest. That's why you don't squat heavy on Monday, front squat heavy on Tuesday, then take the rest of the week off. Train, rest, recover, repeat, that's SRA. So stimulus, homeostatic disruption like the muscle breakdown, then you eat, ingest the nutrients to allow recovery, your body adapts, but then obviously it only gets to a point, and obviously at some point here your baseline will increase as well, but then obviously when you don't train or don't do anything else, the body will just go back to its original state. And again, as you probably gathered, a lot of the figures are quite similar. Like you're generally building up to peak at the top, and then everything will then come back down after it. So, however, with this here graph, it's not quite as easy to get that, because what we don't want to see is this drop off in preparedness. So the athlete's going to be about the same where they sort of were when they started. What we want is this to happen. Oh, sorry, go back. We want them to be building up, peaking, and then sort of maintain, and then going up again and peak when it counts in like the playoffs or the main sort of competition events and whatnot. So to do this, it's all about just timing it right and getting the right training program. But this may take a while for athletes, clients to understand their own bodies, for coaches to understand their athletes, how they react to demands, how some exercise may work really well, and how some exercise may just burn them out completely. Or could be other stresses going on in their lives. So it is interesting and it is fascinating how different people react to different things, because you could give everyone this class, the exact same training program, and if there's 20 views, they have 20 different reactions to it. Some people may gain between 2 to 5 kilograms of muscle mass. Some people may only gain 1. Some people may gain 7 or 8. Just throwing out there. Others may get faster. Others may not. Some people may get injured. Some people may find they don't improve at all. Some people may just feel like they're fitter, but they don't feel they're actually any stronger. They feel they can recover better. So it's all about building the program around the athletes. So when they do the preparation correctly, their competition or their end goals can be met. Okay, and this is an example of a team sort of training program. So again, as I said, this is very much block periodization here within their microcycles and whatnot. So you got your technical, your tactical, your work capacity, your strength, your metabolic conditioning and your plyometric. So again, it's just an example. That's one way of doing it. So for a 16-week long competition period, first or second half of the season, maybe something like this. So week 1, work capacity, week 2, strength, week 3, speed, week 4, metabolic conditioning. Then you rotate that back for the next 4 weeks. Then week 9, you would unload 60% of total training volume. Again, working more on work capacity, strength, speed, metabolic conditioning, where in this period here, you would increase the intensity. So it's getting closer to the competition. Hence why we're going towards like the playoffs or the quarterfinals, semifinals sort of things here, and you really focus on just the skill work. Okay, so this is like, we'll probably just do, this will be part 1, the video, because that is 50 slides there. I'm still got another 50 to go, and I just don't want to keep talking for like an hour and a half for you. So I'll allow you to have a break here. Again, I'll put the part 2 video link. It'll be shared via Will with this, so you can just follow one after the other. So again, thank you for listening to this first part. I'll catch you in the next one. Speak soon.